One of the criticisms raised by opponents of the Quran is the claim that this book contains mistakes in mathematical reasoning. They argue that the author of the Quran could not even correctly add simple fractions, and that this alleged error appears in the verses dealing with inheritance distribution. But does such a mistake really exist in the Quran? Or does a careful and unbiased examination lead to a different conclusion? In this section, we examine this critique. The Quran explicitly outlines the rules of inheritance in several verses. For example, it states that the share of a son is equal to that of two daughters, and that when the deceased leaves children, both the father and the mother receive 1/6, while the wife receives 1/8. The issue arises because in certain combinations of heirs, the sum of the prescribed shares exceeds 1, meaning the estate appears insufficient. For instance, consider a case where the deceased leaves behind two daughters, a father, a mother, and a wife. According to the Quranic prescriptions, the father receives 1/6, the mother 1/6, the wife 1/8, and the two daughters together receive 2/3. However, when these fractions are added together, their total exceeds 1. This point has been used by critics to argue that the Quran contains a basic arithmetic mistake in adding fractions. This difficulty has existed since the early period of Islamic legal practice. Muslim jurists developed a solution known as the Rule of Awl, proportional adjustment. According to this rule, the denominator of the shares is adjusted so that the total equals 1. Most jurists argue that this method resolves the issue and that there is no mathematical error in the Quran itself. However, this response faces two major criticisms. First, the Rule of Awl is not explicitly mentioned in the Quran, which allows critics to argue that the problem lies in the Quranic structure itself and that a separate legal mechanism was later introduced to address it. More importantly, under the Rule of Awl, the actual shares received by heirs are reduced compared to the original figures stated in the Quran, meaning the wife receives less than 1/8 and the parents receive less than 1/6. This raises the question of whether the implementation still reflects the original prescription. But is the problem truly in the Quran or in the method of application? As seen in previous discussions, if the Quranic instructions are applied correctly, the problem does not arise in the first place. Historically, some companions of the Prophet also opposed the Rule of Awl, considering it inconsistent with the Quran. The al-Bayt, family of the Prophet, similarly emphasized that God, who accounts for every particle in existence, would not issue commands that contain a fundamental computational inconsistency in such a simple division. The Quran also presents inheritance as a structured system with hierarchical priorities among heirs. It indicates that some relatives have precedence over others. Accordingly, inheritance is not always treated as a single flat distribution. Shares are first allocated according to priority groups, and any remaining estate is then distributed among lower categories. If this Quranic principle is properly observed along with the interpretive guidance attributed to the Prophet's authentic teachings, then no contradiction or mathematical inconsistency arises, and the Rule of Awl becomes unnecessary. In the same example, the father, mother, and wife would first receive their designated shares, and the remaining estate would go to the daughters, resulting in a complete and consistent distribution. These considerations highlight the importance of distinguishing between the Quran itself and later interpretive traditions. In understanding the Quran, one should not rely solely on popular interpretations, but rather return to the text itself and its authentic interpretive framework.